Tonight we are introducing our first ever inductees into the Junior Achievement Prince Edward Island Business Hall of Fame. Our three distinguished entrepreneurs are being recognized tonight for their vision, their courage, their energy, and their risk-taking. Our first laureate, Carl Frederick Burke, in this first ever Junior Achievement Prince Edward Island Hall of Fame presentation, is an example of how one person's individual story can encourage our junior achievers and all young people to reach out and to emulate the vitality and excitement that is the world of business. Following graduation from Spring Park School and the Charlottetown Business College, Carl found out that radio salesmen were not apt to gain riches in a very fast way. But this is how Carl Frederick Burke first had dreams of making his fortune. His first paycheck was $12, not for his first day on the job, but for his first week. Carl obtained this job with R.T. Holman Limited soon after he left his first job with Rogers Hardware. He thought it would take forever to buy his first aircraft at that rate, as that was his dream, his driving ambition. Times were tough back in those days, and it looked like his finances would not support those dreams. Carl Burke traveled the 200 miles to St. John, New Brunswick to take his first flying lessons, and the 2.5 hours of instructions he would receive on each trip across the strait was, don't forget, all financed by the $12 he realized from his radio selling job. He was still in his teens when Carl and a friend bought an old double-winged, canvas-covered Tiger Moth. It cost $600, and the two aspiring pilots and airlines owners made their first flying money by flying travelers between maritime cities, towns, and villages whenever they missed their trains. His first real job in the industry of organized commercial aviation was when he took employment with Canadian Airways. But this was not to last very long, as Adolf Hitler had other ideas overseas in Europe. In 1941, when men and women from Prince Edward Island lined up to serve in His Majesty's services, Carl Burke and his friend Joe Anderson enlisted as Atlantic ferry pilots, flying the North Atlantic with replacement aircraft for the Royal Canadian Air Force and hoping to make enough money to start a commercial airline. His friend, Anderson, was killed on his last planned flight. Persistence paid off, and in 1941, Carl became the principal owner of Maritime Central Airway. It was his first airline franchise. Those of us old enough to remember those days will recall the motto that Carl used and which hung in the hangar at MCA: "We will fly anything, anywhere." With the $5,000 he had earned in 1941 as a ferry pilot, young Carl was granted the St. John Charlottetown run. Not satisfied with this meager start, Carl convinced Toronto and Montreal financial backers to invest in his ability to the tune of $45,000. With these newfound riches, Carl produced an 8-passenger aircraft, a 4-passenger Fairchild 24, and rented a 10-passenger Boeing 247D. And with this new equipment, Maritime Central Airway was launched with Carl Burke as its chief pilot. His company grew. He integrated with other air services, and soon tons of equipment was being flown into Canada's north as the distant early warning network, the DEW Line, began construction all across Canada's ice cap. In the 1960s, additions to MCA included a short-lived acquisition of Nordair, the multi-million-dollar purchase of DC-3s, a Viscount propeller-driven aircraft, and freight contracts that made Carl Burke Canada's largest independent freight operator. Not only was Carl Burke a Canadian pioneer in aviation, he was also a leader in sound commercial business ventures and an islander who never neglected his community responsibilities. Carl Burke saw a requirement, and he realized it. When intellectually challenged children needed a place to play during summer, Carl created a camp. When First Baptist Church needed new, up-to-date parsonage, it happened because of Carl's intervention. The people of Prince Edward Island named Carl Islander of the Year in 1961, but his business ventures had by now spread their wings, and Carl was now constructing motels in Florida, tourism facilities here at home, and sport facilities, which gained for him the title of the Great Initiator and the Organizing Genius. The end came for Carl Burke in 1976, when, by means of driving his own motorcycle to the Leahy Clinic in Boston, he was admitted, and within a few short days, he died. When the news of Carl's death was published by the Halifax Herald, the following words were printed for islanders and for all Maritimers to read: an aviation pioneer, successful businessman, and public-spirited citizen, of a stature which very few achieve. The honors which came his way were many. A grateful country made him a member of the British Empire. In 1968, Acadia University bestowed upon him a doctorate of civil laws. Perhaps his greatest accolade is the admiration and respect in which he is held by the people of Atlantic Canada and beyond. A constant and determining effort carried Carl Frederick Burke through the challenging times of his business life. His commitment and genuine care for his business name, character, and for those who worked with him infected those who were fortunate enough to be in his employ. He affected and inspired those whose only responsibility was to also remain committed. He had goals, and his attention had always been focused on those goals. Tonight we also have a goal, and that is to induct Carl Frederick Burke with this respected honor and recognition by his peers, his friends, and his colleagues. Ladies and gentlemen, the very first inductee into the Junior Achievement Prince Edward Island Business Hall of Fame, Carl Frederick Burke.